Hi, I'm AnewZ and you're watching AnewZ. Here are the headlines. Israeli Security Cabinet approves Gaza deal, recommends wider government to give its final green light. China's economy beats 2024 forecasts. Georgia's Prime Minister Irakli Kobahidze arrives to Azerbaijan for a working visit. Thank you for tuning in. The Israeli Security Cabinet approved the ceasefire and hostages deal, recommending the wider government to give its final green light. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said that the recommendation of the cabinet comes following an evaluation of all diplomatic, security and humanitarian aspects. The full cabinet's approval is still pending. For more on the ceasefire from Israel, we go to Blake Sifton in Tel Aviv.
The Israeli Security Cabinet approved the ceasefire deal when they met earlier today on Friday. The deal is now currently being discussed by the wider political cabinet. It is expected to pass and would begin on Sunday. This despite opposition from far-right members of Benjamin Netanyahu's ruling coalition, including National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who has said that he will pull his party out of the ruling coalition in protest of this deal. Meanwhile, however, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has said that while his party opposes the deal and will vote against it, they will remain in the coalition. This gives Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition a slim majority in the Knesset. The deal is expected to begin on Sunday and would last for 42 days. It would see the release of 33 hostages. These include female soldiers, female civilians, men over 50, as well as the sick and injured. The list of these hostages who would be released in this first phase of the deal has been made public. However, we do not know the order in which they would be released or how many of them remain alive. The Israeli government has said that a majority are alive. However, it is understood that several are deceased. All of these developments have brought both hope from the families of the hostages that their loved ones may soon be released and that their nightmare may soon be over, but also quite a bit of fear and anxiety on the fate of their loved ones. Blake Sifton for AnewZ, Tel Aviv.
The news of a ceasefire and hostages deal being reached between Israel and Hamas was met with rallies worldwide. While most celebrated, some protested the truce.
Following the announcement of a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, protests erupted globally as people voiced their reactions. The agreement, reached on January 15th, calls for a 6-week truce, with Israeli forces gradually withdrawing from Gaza and hostages being exchanged for Palestinian prisoners. In Israel, hard right supporters blocked highways, condemning the ceasefire. Around 200 protesters gathered near the Knesset, calling on US and Israeli leaders to defend the land of Israel. Meanwhile, families of Israeli hostages expressed frustration over the delay in ratifying the deal. Activists in New York braved sub-zero temperatures to rally in support of the ceasefire, but also called for the swift return of hostages. In London, protesters in Trafalgar Square expressed cautious optimism, relieved for Gaza, but concerned about the durability of the deal.
We wanted to mark the ceasefire agreement, which obviously we are relieved about, and we are in joy because the people of Gaza are in joy. We're relieved because the people of Gaza are relieved. But at the same time, obviously, we have a lot of apprehension because we know that the news of a ceasefire has been floated around previously, and we hope that this ceasefire is actually a permanent ceasefire and that it carries through.
The situation in Iran took on a different tone as demonstrators in Tehran celebrated the deal, waving Hezbollah, Palestinian and Iranian flags. The crowds cheered, claiming the axis of resistance remains strong and defiant, despite the toll the conflict has taken on Gaza. In Jordan, hundreds gathered in Amman to support the ceasefire. Demonstrators expressed relief, particularly over the humanitarian benefits the ceasefire might bring. As international diplomats work to finalize details, the ceasefire appears set to begin on Sunday, but its sustainability remains in question. Both sides have already resumed exchanges of blame, with Israeli warplanes continuing to strike Gaza even after the deal's announcement, further complicating the fragile peace.
The World Health Organization has confirmed that aid deliveries to Gaza could surge to 600 trucks a day under the terms of the ceasefire deal set to begin this Sunday. This would represent a major leap from the current average of just 51 trucks per day. The plan includes sending prefabricated hospitals to support Gaza's health sector, where only half of the 36 hospitals are operational, according to the WHO. The expected aid influx will also help address the urgent medical needs of over 12,000 patients, including many children. The World Health Organization believes that scaling up aid is entirely possible, especially with the potential opening of additional crossings. The 15-month bloodshed in Gaza and Israel has resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands and widespread destruction across Gaza.
A new round of confrontation between Hamas and Israel began on 7 October 2023, when Hamas-led gunmen launched an attack on southern Israel. The assault, which included rampaging through communities, resulted in the death of over 1,200 people and the capture of more than 250 hostages. In retaliation, Israel launched a full-scale military campaign aimed at crushing Hamas. The toll on Palestinians has been catastrophic, with over 46,000 reported dead and many others feared buried under rubble in Gaza. In the early days of the war, Israel responded with airstrikes and a total siege on Gaza. As the conflict escalated, other regional actors such as Lebanon's Hezbollah entered the fray. Hezbollah fired missiles at Israel, stating that the attacks were in support of the Palestinians. This added another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation. By mid-October, Israel had begun evacuating Gaza City, home to over 1 million residents, and ordered them to move south, initiating a mass displacement of Gaza's population. On October 21, international aid began flowing into Gaza through the Rafah border, crossing from Egypt. This relief, however, was insufficient to meet the growing humanitarian crisis. For months, international organizations and Western governments have urged Israel to allow more aid into the region. Despite these calls, the situation continued to worsen, with Gaza's infrastructure severely damaged and thousands of civilians trapped in the fighting. By the end of October, Israel had launched a ground offensive in Gaza. The conflict was relentless, and by mid-November, Israel's forces had entered Gaza's largest hospital, Al-Shifa, after a siege. As the war raged on, the death toll continued to climb. On November 21, a brief 7-day truce was declared, leading to the release of around half of the hostages. However, the ceasefire quickly collapsed, and fighting resumed on December 1. Throughout December, Israel launched a series of large ground operations in southern Gaza, particularly targeting the city of Khan Yunis. In early January 2024, Israel signaled that it would begin withdrawing from northern Gaza, though the conflict continued in other areas. As the war dragged on, Israel faced mounting international pressure. The International Court of Justice in The Hague issued an order on January 26, 2024, urging Israel to prevent genocide in Gaza, highlighting the global concerns over the scale of the violence. The humanitarian situation remained dire, with over 100 Gazans killed in a deadly shooting incident by Israeli troops in late February. In March, US President Joe Biden announced plans for a floating pier to deliver aid to Gaza, but it remains insufficient, and the crisis continued to worsen throughout the year. In April, the war expanded beyond Gaza when a suspected Israeli airstrike hit an Iranian compound in Damascus, killing several military officers, including a top general. Iran retaliated by launching a series of missile and drone attacks on Israel. By May, a proposal for ceasefire from Hamas was on the table, but Israel rejected it, leading to further clashes. Despite heavy fighting, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu indicated that the conflict would not end until Hamas no longer controlled Gaza. However, by mid-2024, the war had not shown signs of abating, with heavy bouts of fighting continuing across Gaza, even as Israel issued evacuation orders for more southern cities. As the conflict wore on, regional tensions reached a boiling point. In July, a Hezbollah rocket attack killed 12 children in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, prompting Israel to vow retaliation. Israel claimed to have killed Hamas military chief Mohammed Deif in early July airstrike, though Hamas neither confirmed nor denied his death. Later in the month, on July 31, Israeli forces assassinated Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran alongside his bodyguard. In September of 2024, thousands of booby-trap pager communications devices used by Hezbollah were detonated in Lebanon, injuring not only hundreds of its members, but also many civilians. Israeli officials confirmed its involvement in the operation. On September 28, an Israeli airstrike in Beirut killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. On October 16, Israel killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar in a shootout in Rafah, further weakening the group's leadership. At the same time, the humanitarian crisis continued to deepen in the enclave. Gaza faced severe outbreaks of disease, including a confirmed case of polio for the first time in 25 years. This came alongside Israel's parliament voting at the end of October 2024 to ban the UN Relief and Works Agency from the country within 90 days. UN Relief and Works Agency has been a key organization providing humanitarian aid, education, healthcare and social services to Palestinian refugees in the Middle East, including in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria and Jordan. In November, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Israeli and Hamas leaders for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. On November 27, Israel and Hezbollah reached a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon, providing a brief respite in the region. Despite this, the war continued, and by December, US President-elect Donald Trump warned of severe consequences if hostages were not freed before his January 20 inauguration. Finally, on January 15, 2025, after 15 months of intense fighting, negotiators reached a deal for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. This agreement included provisions for halting the violence and exchanging hostages for prisoners, offering a glimmer of hope that the devastating war could soon come to an end.
International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan visited Damascus for talks with the Syrian authorities on how the War Crimes Tribunal could help their efforts to prosecute crimes allegedly committed in the country. Khan was invited to Syria by the transitional government, which took over after former President Bashar al-Assad was toppled in December. Khan met with Syria's de facto ruler Ahmed al-Sharaa to discuss how the ICC prosecutors could support the Syrian authorities in their efforts towards accountability for alleged crimes committed in the country, his office said. The UN Security Council was briefed on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine by UN Chief of Political Affairs, according to whom civilian casualties surged by a third in 2024 compared to the previous year.
Following a briefing at the United Nations, emotions were mixed as the situation in Ukraine worsens. UN Under-Secretary General Rosemary DiClero expressed a grave concern over the increase in civilian casualties, especially among children. DiClero condemned Russia's continued attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, calling them reprehensible and aimed at terrorizing civilians. DiCarlo also raised alarming reports of North Korean troops fighting alongside Russian forces, a development that has sparked concerns about the war's further internationalization. South Korea's Ambassador Jong Kwang elaborated, relieving that 2 North Korean soldiers were captured in the Kursk region of Russia, and they were unaware of being deployed for the war. The allegations were strongly denied by Russia, with Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia dismissing them as a part of a large narrative against Russia. He further accused Ukraine of preparing a bloody provocation to blame Russia.
The rumors in Kiev suggest that the regime, together with its UK sponsors, is preparing a large-scale bloody provocation for which Russia will be blamed.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's Ambassador Sergei Kislesta responded to Russia's denials, reaffirming that Ukrainian forces had indeed captured North Korean soldiers in the Kursk region, contradicting Russia's claims.
We all remember how vehemently Russia denied in this chamber any involvement of the DPRK troops in this war against Ukraine. Last week, Ukrainian Defense Forces captured North Korean soldiers in the Kursk region.
As tensions continue, the involvement of North Korean soldiers and the ongoing fighting deepen concerns over the future trajectory of the conflict.
Ukrainian police said its officers were conducting 200 searches nationwide as part of an ongoing probe into the illegal exit of military-aged men from the country. The raids are just the latest step in a countrywide probe launched by law enforcement last week, when Kyiv said police were searching around 600 homes, offices, and other sites. Last week, police said the operation was primarily targeting the organizers of schemes that help draft evaders to illegally cross the Ukrainian border. Denmark says it plans to expand its air base in Greenland, transforming it into an operational military base to strengthen its presence in the Arctic. The base will host F-35 fighter jets and long-range drones for surveillance and defense. The move follows a $2.1 billion plan approved by Denmark's parliament to enhance military capabilities in the region, including the acquisition of new drones and patrol vessels. In Montenegro, thousands came out to protest the government's handling of a mass shooting that took place on January 1st in Cetinje.
Thousands of people have taken to the streets in Montenegro's town, Cetinje, to protest the government's response to a mass shooting in the southern city. The shooting took place on New Year's Day when a 45-year-old man opened fire after a bar brawl, which killed 13 people, including 2 children. Now these demonstrators call for authorities to resign for failure to ensure public safety.
Our country has once again shown that it has done nothing to protect its citizens and prevent the suffering of the innocent. No one has taken responsibility for such a tragic crime. That is why we are now asking here, who is responsible? Where are those who are accountable, and why have they been silent for days?
Authorities, however, say the shooting was not planned and was impossible to predict and prevent. Stricter gun laws aimed at curbing illegal weapons have been announced, and police raids confiscated approximately 20 firearms and over 500 rounds of ammunition and explosives from various locations as a response to the shooting.
Wildfires in Southern California have claimed 27 lives since January 7th, leaving thousands of homes destroyed and causing widespread devastation. The Eaton fire is now the deadliest in the region's history.
The devastating wildfires that have been raging across Southern California since January 7th have claimed at least 27 lives, according to a report released on Thursday by the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office. The Palisades fire is responsible for 10 deaths, while the Eaton fire has been linked to 17 fatalities. The wildfires have caused widespread destruction, leaving thousands of homes and structures in ruins. With the Eaton fire now considered the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in Southern California's history, the Palisades fire ranks as the second most severe. The damage has been particularly devastating in the Pacific Palisades area, where approximately 510 hectares have burned, stretching between Santa Monica and Malibu. As smoke filled the skies, around 30,000 people were forced to evacuate their homes. The fires created severe traffic disruptions as people fled the area, with extreme winds further complicating the situation overnight. Officials have estimated that the economic losses from the fires could reach between $250 billion to $275 billion US. While fewer than 100,000 people remain under evacuation orders, some areas are still impacted by the ongoing flames. To aid recovery efforts, a benefit concert called Fire Aid will be held on January 30th. It would feature performances from major artists, including Los Angeles-born native Billie Eilish and her brother Finance, along with Dave Matthews, John Mayer, and Sting. The concert aims to raise funds to support those affected by the catastrophic wildfires.
The U.S. Supreme Court has upheld a law that bans TikTok nationwide unless its China-based parent company, ByteDance, sells the platform by Sunday. TikTok had challenged the law, arguing it would violate free speech protections for the app's more than 170 million users it says it has in the U.S. Both Democrat and Republican lawmakers voted to ban the app last year over concerns about its links to the Chinese government. TikTok has repeatedly stated it does not share information with Beijing. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian and Russian President Vladimir Putin have signed a 20-year strategic partnership treaty that includes closer defense cooperation. Iranian and Russian officials said the comprehensive strategic partnership treaty covers areas from trade and military cooperation to science, culture, and education. Among other things, the two of the most heavily sanctioned countries in the world agreed to create a modern payment system that is independent on third countries with settlement in national currencies. Our Dasha Chernyshova brings more on the treaty from Moscow.
After hours of talks and years of preparations, Moscow and Tehran have signed a broad cooperation pact to deepen their partnership and inject new momentum to their bilateral cooperation. The Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement covers a wide range of areas, from trade and military cooperation to science, education, and culture. It replaces a 2001 document that outlined bilateral cooperation and creates a new mechanism for implementing new projects. The Iranian president also says it will fight what he called unipolarity. Both sides stressed that their cooperation in the area of defense and security is not new, adding that these ties are not directed against any third parties, but rather relate to the security and stability of the region. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, who met his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin for the third time since coming to power in July, said the documents form what he described as the solid foundation for forward movement. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said earlier that the practical next steps would follow once the treaty has been legally established. The Kremlin also warned against speculating about the possible connection between the date of the signing of the treaty and the upcoming inauguration of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on January the 20th. Ahead of the treaty signing, Vladimir Putin and Masoud Pezeshkian discussed bilateral relations, regional and international issues, as well as trade. Moscow says relations between Russia and Iran are built on the principles of equality, respect, and mutual assistance. President Putin also added that the positions of Russia and Iran on most foreign policy issues coincide. Masoud Pezeshkian told Putin on Friday that he believed both countries could finalize agreements on the construction of a nuclear power plant in Iran. Russia built Iran's first nuclear power plant in the port of Bushehr that became operational in 2013. The next year, Moscow signed a contract to build 2 more nuclear reactors. Russia was also part of the 2015 deal between Iran and the 6 nuclear powers, offering sanctions relief for Tehran in exchange for curbing its atomic program and opening it to broader international scrutiny. The 2 countries are under heavy economic pressure from the West, but bilateral trade is growing and is expected to hit the record of $4 billion in 2024. Dasha Cherneshova in Moscow for AnewZ.
Georgia's Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze met with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev in Baku. The leaders discussed Azerbaijani-Georgian relations and the implementation of large-scale projects.
President Ilham Aliyev warmly welcomed Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze, expressing satisfaction with his return visit to Azerbaijan. The president noted that this visit once again underscores the depth and strategic importance of Azerbaijani-Georgian relations. President Ilham Aliyev highly praised the progress in energy, transportation and economic cooperation between Azerbaijan and Georgia.
İqtisadi sahədə yaxşı nəticələr var. Azərbaycan Gürcüstan iqtisadiyyatına 3.6 milyard.
We have achieved excellent results in the economic sphere. Azerbaijan has invested $3.6 billion in Georgia's economy. This demonstrates your government's successful economic policies, the attraction of investments, and the very favorable investment climate in Georgia that encourages investors. The joint oil and gas projects we have implemented form the foundation of energy security for many countries today.
İnvestorları da böyük həvəslə Gürcüstana öz sərmayələrini.
For instance, through Georgia's transit, Azerbaijan currently exports natural gas to 11 countries, with exports increasing annually. Last year, this volume reached 25 billion cubic meters, of which 10%, our total exports, were accounted for by Georgia. According to the information I received, over 80% of the natural gas consumed in Georgia is of Azerbaijani origin. Our new gas fields will begin operating this year, and additional discoveries are expected in the coming years. Therefore, the export of natural gas will continue to grow.
Geçen yıl bu 25 milyar kubmetre çatmıştır.
President Aliyev also emphasized the importance of the Middle Corridor project and highlighted Azerbaijan's efforts in digitizing its transportation infrastructure. He characterized the Azerbaijani-Georgian partnership as a guarantor of stability and expressed confidence that these relations would further strengthen. Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze thanked President Aliyev for his warm hospitality and emphasized that Azerbaijan is a reliable friend and strategic partner for Georgia. He highlighted the productive 10th session of the Intergovernmental Joint Commission on Economic Cooperation and underscored the importance of strategic projects jointly undertaken by the 2 countries.
The economic and trade sectors are also very important, and we are pleased that Azerbaijan is among Georgia's top 5 trade partners. Our partnership must deepen further, which we discussed during the Intergovernmental Commission session. I would like to reiterate that our cooperation, built on strong foundations, historical relations, and brotherhood, will continue to strengthen. On behalf of our people, I express our determination to deepen our political partnership, and Georgia will spare no effort in achieving this.
Kobakidze also reaffirmed Georgia's commitment to ensuring peace and stability in the South Caucasus region. Later, President Ilham Aliyev and Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze held an extended meeting over lunch. Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze's visit to Azerbaijan concluded successfully.
With just 3 days to go until Donald Trump returns to the White House on the new administration's potential to influence events and collaborate in the regions of South Caucasus and Central Asia, we're talking to Eric Rodenshold of the Caspian Policy Center, coming to us live from Washington. Hi, Eric. Thank you for joining us. Let's start with the South Caucasus. Azerbaijan and Armenia have been engaged in peace talks since the end of the Second Karabakh War in 2020. The two sides say that the peace treaty is almost 80% complete. Do you see Trump's return to the White House as a possible positive push for the talks? And how do you think the new administration could affect the relations in the region as a whole?
Well, I certainly hope that the administration will be a helpful push for the talks. I think it's certainly a unique time here in Washington. There's a lot of excitement about the new administration coming in. Is this region going to be at the top of their agenda? No. They have a lot of hot conflicts that they're walking into at this point. But I was on the National Security Council under President Trump, as well as under President Biden. And I know there is a lot of intense focus on this region as a crossroads. And so I think there will be certainly attention paid and interest levied as we move forward in the next few months.
Well, as you mentioned, there are global hotspots that primarily deserve attention as they are open conflicts. But sticking with the South Caucasus, as we're speaking right now, Georgia's Prime Minister is in Azerbaijan on a working visit, talking a number of issues and project. Do you see such a collaboration of two countries perhaps expanding to include Armenia as well?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think the inclusion of Armenia into the middle corridor, into sort of helping normalize relations between all three countries it would be a very positive step forward. Certainly, as we saw what happened in Central Asia, the five countries, after many years of kind of competing with each other, learned in the last few years that there is much more to be gained by working with each other. And I'm hopeful that we will see this place in the South Caucasus at this point.
Well, you touched upon the middle corridor. That is something that interests both the U.S. and China. The transport route, the network of railways and ports bringing goods from China to Europe. How important is it right now, given that its alternative is the northern corridor that goes right through Russia?
Well, obviously, the northern corridor is very much inhibited by sanctions, and the early indicators for the new Trump administration is that they are not going to go light on sanctions, and in fact, they look to impose more sanctions on Russia as we speak. I think when you look at the possibilities of the middle corridor, it is already doubled in capacity and then doubled again. We've seen remarkable improvements in the throughput of cargo across Central Asia, now across the Caspian. The port of Baku has expanded multiple times. Huge improvements and investments on the rails through Georgia. You know, we can move goods from the border with China across to the Black Sea in 12 to 14 days now. It used to be 2 to 3 times that. So I think the middle corridor is a huge opening and opportunity, and certainly the potential, it offers a great potential for Armenia to join if the rail line is rebuilt through Armenia. It will more than double the capacity of the middle corridor. That is a huge lift for all countries, all 8 Central Asian and Caucasus countries, to be able to boost trade that much.
How important would you say that trade will be in Trump's foreign policy agenda? We all know his reputation as a businessman, but also the threats he made during the campaign trail regarding tariffs on Beijing, Ottawa, Mexico City.
Well, I mean, he is a businessman. He's more a businessman than a politician, and I think it's wise to pay attention to his statements and in his discussions about tariffs. Certainly, the Middle Corridor, many people analyze it as some kind of highway for goods from China across to Europe. But the reality is, according to an EU study from last year, 95% of the goods that transit the region actually are from Central Asia and the Caucasus themselves. It has become this vast growth. Well, I guess one can say it's an incubator for business and trade within these regions and reaching across to Europe. And I think for that alone, this will be of great interest here in Washington. You know, there's strategic minerals in Central Asia and in the Caucasus, uranium, all sorts of various rare earths that are critical for next generation energy, for defense purposes. And so I think Washington will be very interested in what is a very different place now than it was the last time President Trump was in office. The Middle Corridor didn't exist then, it does now, and I think it's here to stay.
Well, during then President Trump's first term, his administration had a Central Asia policy seeking to counter Chinese influence in the region of Central Asia. Do you see something along those lines happening now?
Well, yeah, given that I authored that strategy, I think you will see certainly a lot of focus on the region and a strategy for the region. We just here at the Caspian Policy Center actually launched a draft strategy for the administration to consider that looks at Central Asia and obviously picks up the momentum that already exists there, but recognizes that Central Asia alone, without the Caucasus, it remains bottled up. You need to have the Caucasus engaged in all of the development related to Central Asia. So I think we'll definitely see this administration reach that way. You know, will it be an effort to contain China? I don't think so, but I think what you will see, the countries in the region are interested not just in counterbalancing China anymore, or counterbalancing Russia. They're actually interested in finding alternative partnerships. And I think that's a definite shift in perspective between the countries and their desire to reach westward versus what we saw 4 or 5 years ago.
Just as you mentioned, the situation is not like it was 4 or 5 years ago. What has in your mind changed? Are these countries now more open?
Well, I think the war with Ukraine and the sanctions that have happened have been very much an eye-opener for countries of the region. Russia has always bullied its neighbors, but I think with sanctions, countries in the region have definitely had to be able to find other ways of doing business. They can't do business the way they have with Russia in the past. Sanctions make that very difficult for them, and it potentially makes trade with other countries globally impossible. And so countries in the Caucasus, the South Caucasus, with Central Asia, they're looking for new markets, new partnerships. And that's why we see a huge interest from the EU, from the United States, from other countries to engage with these regions. We're already seeing that. And I think we'll see more of that as we move forward.
Do you think there will be any possible pushback, blowback on countries in the region that are effectively serving as a conduit for Russia to circumvent the the unprecedented amount of sanctions. It's under, for example, Armenia imported a very large amount of gold and diamonds from Russia, then re-exported it to the UAE and placed it on the global market. What could you tell us about these attempts to circumvent sanctions?
I mean, that is a major concern. When you impose sanctions, you want to make sure that they're effective. And I think there is a lot of focus on that. One of the challenges that governments in the region have is being able to monitor goods that transit their countries. They're not really set up for active engagement. And so that really is a challenge in working with governments to make sure that they stay on the right side of sanctions, because the last thing you want to have happen to you is to have secondary sanctions imposed on your own country and your goods. And so I think we have seen countries across the region be extremely serious and concerned about making sure that they do remain lawful and in compliance with these commitments. So I'm hopeful that we continue to see the U.S. government, the OFAC office, work very closely with the countries of the region. And we've certainly seen that so far.
Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insights and opinions.
My pleasure.
Ruben Vardanyan faced charges today in Baku's military court, accused of terrorism, financing armed groups, and other offenses. Our Nigar Shirinova brings more.
The court hearing as to the criminal case of Ruben Vardanyan, a Russian billionaire and former separatist leader once based in Karabakh accused of war crimes, has taken place today. Ruben Vardanyan is accused of acts of terrorism, financing terrorism crimes against peace and humanity, war crimes, and numerous other offenses against the Republic of Azerbaijan and its people. He was detained on September 27, 2023 at the Lachin border checkpoint while attempting to leave Azerbaijan. It's worth remembering that prior to his arrival to Azerbaijan back in September 2022, Vardanyan's name had already been implicated in money laundering and financial schemes in connection with his financial brainchild known as the Troika Dialogue. The current legal case, however, concerns his activities in Azerbaijan's internationally recognized Karabakh region. Vardanyan, according to his prosecution, has played significant role in financing and supporting activities that undermined Azerbaijan's sovereignty. Following Azerbaijan's anti-terror measures in September 2023, which restored full control over the region, his case has become a key part of the process described by Azerbaijan as restoration of justice. We will continue to keep you informed as the latest developments concerning this trial. Nigar Shirinova, AnewZ.
Who is Ruben Vardanyan and how did he become embroiled in such high-stakes allegations? Here are the details.
Vardanyan's court hearing, presided over by Judge Zainal Agayev on January 17th, addresses accusations ranging from terrorism to crimes against humanity. According to the Azerbaijani State Security Service, these charges stem from his alleged involvement in funding and organizing illegal armed groups operating in Karabakh. Best known as the founder of Troika Dialogue, one of Russia's premier investment banks, Vardanyan also carved a reputation as an advocate for global Armenian interests. His career trajectory has taken him from Moscow's financial elite to international headlines. Vardanyan's impact on Russia's economy was profound. Under his leadership, Troika Dialogue became a cornerstone of Russian finance, and he served on the boards of major companies like Kamaz and Volga-Dnepr. His work extended to the Skolkovo Innovation Center, a flagship project in Russia's bid to modernize its economy. Organised Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, OCCRP, revealed that Troika Dialogue facilitated the transfer of billions of dollars through a complex network of offshore accounts. These transactions reportedly benefited Russian oligarchs and government-affiliated entities. Although Vardanyan has denied direct involvement, OCCRP's investigation paints a picture of a financial ecosystem intertwined with Kremlin interests.
Vardanyan and his family were among those who received money from the laundromat. More than $3.2 million was used to pay for his American Express card, went to accounts belonging to his wife and family, and paid school fees for his 3 children in Great Britain. Asked about these sums, Vardanyan said the offshore companies Troika created serviced his own companies in addition to the bank's clients.
In a dramatic shift, Vardanyan renounced his Russian citizenship in 2022 to avoid Western sanctions. But Ukraine included him on its sanctions list for providing logistical support to the Russian occupation army. Right after denouncing his Russian citizenship, he relocated to Karabakh, assuming the role of state minister in the so-called unrecognized self-proclaimed Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. He positioned himself as a visionary leader focused on the region's development amid escalating tensions. The timing of Vardanyan's move has raised suspicions. Analysts argue that his presence in Karabakh coincided with Russia's strategic interests in maintaining influence over the South Caucasus. Vardanyan has faced accusations of being a Kremlin-installed figure aimed at undermining Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, who has pursued more pro-Western policies. These claims are widely discussed in geopolitical analyses, including reports by Stratfor and the Moscow Times. During his tenure as state minister, Vardanyan reportedly facilitated the operations of illegal armed factions. According to Azerbaijani security services, he facilitated the funding and operation of these groups, contravening international and Azerbaijani law. His activities have been a focal point in Azerbaijan's legal and diplomatic efforts to reassert control over Karabakh.
Based on the collected evidence, reasonable suspicions have arisen that Vardanyan Ruben Karlenovich, born in 1968, currently a citizen of the Republic of Armenia, committed the criminal acts under Articles 214-1, financing of terrorism, 279.3, participation in an armed formations or groups, which are not provided by the legislation, and 318.1, illegal crossing of the state border of the Republic of Azerbaijan, of the Criminal Code of the Republic of Azerbaijan.
Vardanyan's arrest on September 27, 2023, marked a turning point. Azerbaijani forces detained him while he attempted to cross into Armenia, citing substantial evidence of his involvement in terrorism and other crimes. His trial, taking place on January 17th, not only scrutinizes his actions, but also has broader implications for regional dynamics.
China's economy has wrapped up 2024 on a stronger note than anticipated, supported by government stimulus measures. However, looming challenges, including tensions with the United States and weak domestic demand, make prospects for 2025 uncertain.
China's 2024 economic performance highlights a delicate balancing act. While stimulus measures have provided a boost, the path ahead is fraught with uncertainties, ranging from domestic challenges to global trade tensions. Data released by the National Bureau of Statistics today shows that China's economy grew by 5.0% in 2024, meeting the government's annual target. Fourth quarter growth was the strongest in over a year, reflecting the impact of recent support measures. China's gross domestic product expanded by 1.6% quarter on quarter, aligning with forecasts and improving from a revised 1.3% in the previous quarter. These figures highlight the impact of Beijing's stimulus efforts designed to stabilize growth amid ongoing challenges. Yet, the economic landscape remains complex. China continues to struggle with a prolonged property crisis, rising local government debt, and sluggish consumer demand. On the international front, US President-elect Donald Trump, set to return to the White House next week, has proposed steep tariffs on Chinese goods. Analysts warn that these measures could undermine the stability of China's export sector. Despite these challenges, China achieved a trade surplus of $992 billion in last year. However, yuan has faced pressure, dropping to a 16-month low. Analysts attribute this to a strong US dollar, falling Chinese bond yields, and fears of heightened trade barriers. Meanwhile, December's economic data suggests that Beijing's support measures are gaining traction. Industrial output and retail sales both showed solid improvements, aided by government efforts and preparations for the upcoming Lunar New Year.
In Spain, several thousand people gathered for the annual Las Luminarias festival as horses and riders took part in the traditional bonfire celebration.
It's that time of the year again. A few thousand people have gathered in San Bartolomé de Pinares, a village northwest of Madrid, for what is commonly known as the annual Las Luminarias festival. The streets are lit up by numerous bonfires as riders take turns riding their horses through the flames. The objective of the ritual is to purify and protect each horse involved. Residents seem to appreciate the spectacle.
The celebration of Las Luminarias is special. It's a special feeling. I, for example, do not ride a horse, but I admit that if I don't come and don't get purified with the smoke, my year goes differently. My year starts on January 16th.
I can't explain in words what it is. You have to live through it in order to understand what it is like.
This festival takes place every year on the eve of St. Anthony's Day, who is Spain's patron saint of animals. The event has been criticized by animal rights groups over the past years, but organizers say they take precautionary measures like braiding horses' manes and covering their tails to protect them from being burnt. More than 100 horses and their riders participated in this year's event.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you for watching and do stay tuned to AnewZ.